Maybe you've used Power Platform and SQL before, but did you know we've been working on some new updates? Learn all about them and how you can get started this week on Data Exposed. Hi, I'm Anna Hoffman, and welcome to this episode of Data Exposed. Today, I'm joined by the Power Apps team. Super excited to have both Lance and Ritesh on the show. Lance, can you give us a quick intro of what you do?
Sure, I'm a principal product manager, in the Power Apps team.
Awesome, cool, great to have you. And Ritesh, what do you do?
I'm principal product manager with Dataverse security team. Yep.
Awesome, cool. Well, it's great to have you both on the show. Makes sense because we have a couple topics here, but I want to give a primer and pass it over to you, Lance, to understand what are some of the scenarios you're seeing really popular with Power Apps, or an example of Power Apps and SQL together?
Very good. All right, so one of the big things about the Power Platform is that it's a combination of low code and more highly developed code. And one of the big things that we are trying to go after is modernizing apps that are over existing data stores. This is a quick story about Coca-Cola that illustrates the idea. So Coca-Cola, the bottling company, basically they have an existing store, SAP, and they wanted to basically leave that in place and just start using Power Apps and Power Automate to modernize their story. And by virtue of the way we're actually able to work with SAP, they were able to basically eliminate, not eliminate, but get the cost savings of about 10 full-time resources, and get to a place where basically they can iterate super fast over what they need and get the kinds of solutions that they want. So in this case, bringing all the Power Platform together, bringing in Flow for asynchronous operations, Power Apps for forms over data, Power Pages, etc., to get to a great modern story. And really, we know that there are a lot of SQL Server databases that are out there today, and we have not always done a great job about dealing with SQL Server. We kind of just said, if you can get to the table, you're good to go. We kind of ignored a couple of key things. And there's two key things that we were really big that we've addressed recently. One that Ritesh is going to speak to, which is around Vnet, and the other is around direct access to SQL store procedures.
Cool, awesome. Well, it's great to hear that there are some good use cases here. Of course, Coca-Cola is a huge household name, so it's neat to see how they're using that without having to do a ton. They can take advantage of the systems they already have in place.
Much faster, yeah.
Exactly. Awesome. Cool. Thanks so much, Lance. Ritesh, let's talk about Vnets. This is a super hot topic in the Azure SQL database space.
Yeah, Vnet is something that we are bringing that capability to Power Platform, and we want to ensure that the capability adds value to the customer security posture, right? So one of key challenges that our customer had, that if they want to connect Power Platform with private endpoint protected resources within the Azure, they didn't have a direct way to do it. Now with the Vnet, they will be able to connect to the services like SQL hosted in Azure using SQL Connector. Right now we have SQL Connector in preview, and we would like our customers to try it out and provide feedback on that. So some of the challenges that we were seeing earlier is connectors and plugins basically cannot use the resources within the customer private network without being available on the internet. Now that with the Vnet support, we don't have that requirement. So if you look at the top one, we see that this is the current state of how the Power Platform accesses private endpoint protected resources in Azure. So every resource needs to open basically a port, or needs to be available over the public IP to access it. Now with the Vnet support, what we are bringing here is that now you don't have to basically make your services available over the internet. Instead, the Power Platform services like Dataverse plugins or SQL Connector will be able to connect directly to your resources within your network, as you see in this diagram. Let's move
Amazing.
to the next.
This is actually a really big deal because private endpoint is something we're seeing more and more from SQL customers. So to have the same thing for your Power Apps just makes a ton of sense.
Yep. Now, I'm just going to briefly touch about how the configuration experience will look like, and we have the documentation already available in the learn.microsoft.com. You can go and look at the documentation. We'll share the link as well. So we have two particular distinct persona here. One is the Azure Network Administrator, another is Power Platform Administrator role. So basically, step 1 to 4, network administrator needs to perform, and point like a step number 5, the Power Platform admin needs to do it. One thing to note here is that Power Platform enterprise policy can be allocated to multiple environments. So in this demo, we'll see how a model-driven Power Apps leverage a virtual table to securely manage the customer data. You can see in this diagram that we are connecting Power Apps with virtual table in the Dataverse and using SQL connector. And SQL connector is connecting to the SQL Dataverse in Azure over the private endpoint. You can see here that we have the customer details, and we are accessing the SQL which is behind the private endpoint, and it is public internet is disabled. So you can see that we have the private access enabled on the SQL. Now using this, when we go to the SQL and we try to see the records, we have 9 records here. And when we go ahead and open one record and make an update or save a new record, basically, you can see that the records gets updated. And these all calls are going over the private network. It's not traveling over the public network. You can see new record created in the SQL table. We can similarly go ahead and update one of the record, and we can see the data in the SQL table. So I'm updating here the record, and let's go back and see in the SQL. Yeah, I'll refresh this, and you can see here that the data is updated already. Let's go ahead and do multiple updates. So I'm going to do multiple updates from the backend, and we'll go back to the model-driven app, Power Apps, and we try to see again that are we able to see this update in real time. So I'm just going to open one of the record, and you can see that whatever we made updates in SQL table is available to the app securely over the virtual network. So beautiful Power Apps connecting to virtual tables through SQL connector to the SQL server and getting the data securely over the private network.
Awesome, cool. That's great to see, and not just to see how kind of simple it is to set up, but also just confirming that it all works. So thanks so much, Ritesh. I understand that Vnet support is not the only thing you guys have been working on. Lance, can you wrap this up by telling us, what else is new and what else are you guys thinking about working on?
Yeah, so the other thing that we've been working on is direct calls of store procedures from within Power Apps, because it speeds up your app by quite a bit. There's a half a second call to call flow, for instance, to go call a store procedure. And if you can directly call it, you get a speed bump. But there's a list of things here. Basically, we finished secure implicit connections, Vnet, which Ritesh was just speaking about, directly calling, date time delegation, which is a long-standing issue, external tenant access, and then a big one, which is actually SQL AAD/Enter support, which we're right in the middle of developing work for, and then service principal support, which allows a service principal to run apps. And this is an example, very briefly, of what the experience looks like for working with SQL and store procedures. Here I have basically on the submit button, basically if I'm creating a book, I call one store procedure. If I'm updating it, I call a different one. The nice thing here is that you'll be able to actually attach these store procedures to a gallery, which you normally could not do, but you'll be able to mark it as safe because many of the times stored procedures have side-affecting behaviors, but sometimes they're just purely data. You'll be able to get at all of the multiple result sets, table 1 through table n. So the only caveat here is that because stored procs don't page, you're responsible. You will get all of the data, and you'll be responsible for making sure that the right kind of data is coming in. The best combination is to use a view for the gallery and then stored procedures basically for your updates and deletes and creates basically of form elements. And then the final thing is that when we expose this, we exposed it along the line of we extended the tabular connector to only talk to stored procedures and the regular tabular functions. And that provides to makers another line of security. So they can't get arbitrary SQL, for instance, and go write anything they want. They're limited to the stored procedures that the DBA or whoever else has put out. If you're a pro, then you just write the stored procedure directly and write the arbitrary SQL that you want, and then you can do whatever you want. But if you're a low code, you're limited to what actually has been published.
Well, thanks so much, Lance. Thanks so much, Ritesh. I learned a lot. For our viewers, I bet you learned a lot too about Power Apps and what's new. And we'll put some links in the description for you to learn more. Leave us a comment and let us know what you think and what you'd like to see next. And we hope to see you next time on Data Exposed.